In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon His last and beloved Messenger Muhammad, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all. The title of this episode is The Superiority of the Quran, Diagnosis and Cure for Obsessive Compulsive Disorder, OCD. Now, this episode, brothers and sisters, is a series of episodes showing the miracle of the Quran in our time. And the miracle of the Quran in this time is that the Quran is superior to the main theme of the people of this age, which is knowledge. So the knowledge of the Quran, the knowledge of Allah God Almighty in the Quran, is superior to the knowledge of people in this day and age. So people understand knowledge, and they know what knowledge can do, and they know the limitations of knowledge. So Allah shows a superior knowledge in the Quran, which testifies that the Quran is the last revelation of Allah God to people, and testifies to the truthfulness of the prophethood of Muhammad, peace be upon him. And the Quran is superior to the main theme of the people of this age in many aspects. For example, the Quran is one book which contains all the branches of knowledge. It contains engineering, medicine, jurisprudence, economics, physics, chemistry, all the branches of knowledge. So if a believer shows that the noble Quran contains the knowledge of everything, so this testifies that the Quran is from Allah God Almighty, because the only one who can encompass the knowledge of everything is the Creator. No human, regardless of how clever he or she is, can encompass all the branches of knowledge. For example, Einstein is one of the most clever people we know about. All of his life he was very good in a certain aspect of physics. So as I said, no one, regardless of how clever he is, can encompass all branches of knowledge. So if the believer shows that the Quran contains all branches of knowledge, then this proves that the Quran is from Allah God Almighty. Secondly, that the noble Quran is superior to all the branches of knowledge. And this episode shows how the knowledge of the Quran in the field of psychology is superior to the knowledge of people in that field. For example, an example in this episode is obsessive compulsive disorder. It's what people call a mental illness. It's a very kind of widespread mental illness called obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. And the symptoms are that the person hears ideas in his head containing ideas of harm, thoughts of harm to hurt himself and others, ideas of lust and perverted sexual ideas, and to say about Allah what a person has no knowledge of, meaning blasphemy, insulting religious concepts. Now, this disease, this mental illness, people failed to diagnose, to find the correct diagnosis for it, and they failed to find the cure for OCD. So people with their knowledge in psychology, they failed to diagnose and to cure this disease. That's the bottom line. Now, I will show, Allah God willing, in this episode, how to find the correct diagnosis and the cure for OCD from the guidance of the Quran, the last revelation of Allah God to people, which shows the superiority of the Quran, which something that which shows the spirit of the Quran, the ability of the Quran to find answers and discoveries and inventions that people fail to do. So it's another level of knowledge. It's the knowledge of Allah God Almighty in the Quran. Now, how to diagnose and cure OCD from the Quran? Now, if we think about the verses of the Quran, because the key, brothers and sisters, to understand the Quran is to ponder and reflect upon the verses and not just merely reciting them. So if you think about chapter 2, verses 168 and 169, where Allah Almighty states the following, translation is the following: O people, eat of that which is lawful and good on the earth, and follow not the footsteps of Satan. Verily, he is to you an open enemy. Satan, he commands you what is harmful, sinful, and say about Allah what you have no knowledge of. So Allah God Almighty in these verses shows to us the symptoms of the effect of Satan on people. where Allah states, He, i.e. Satan, commands you what is harmful, sinful, and to say about Allah what you have no knowledge of. So if we compare the symptoms of the effect of Satan on people to the symptoms people with OCD suffer from, we find a perfect match between the two. Because the people with OCD, they suffer from ideas of harm, to hurt themselves and others, ideas of lust, and blasphemy. So we see a perfect match between the two. So Allah God Almighty teaches us that the cause of the diagnosis now for OCD, the cause of OCD is Satan. So Satan causes OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. Now when I say this, when I say Satan, we learn from the Holy Quran that Satan is the cause for OCD. People with regards to Satan, they are in so much ignorance about this topic. And people are divided into three categories. One category, one part of people, they deny the existence of Satan. They say that Satan simply does not exist. The other category, the other group of people, they think that Satan is a fairy tale kind of creature, like the unicorn, like other kind of fairy tale characters. And the last category of people, they believe that Satan exists, but they don't know how does Satan affect them. So the only book on the face of the earth which explains in details how does Satan affect each and every one of us is the Noble Quran, the last revelation of Allah God to people, which is explained as follows: how does Satan affect people? Now we can learn from the Quran that each and every one of us has a voice of oneself, and that's the voice you speak with, and it's the same voice you hear in your head when you are thinking quietly to yourself. So we can learn from the Noble Quran that each and every one of us has a voice of oneself. It's the voice that you speak with, and it's the same voice you hear in your head when you are thinking quietly to yourself. And that's normal. Also we can learn from the Noble Quran that each and every one of us has a companion devil. That is, when you are born, a devil is assigned to you, and it stays with you till death. So he's a companion for you in your earthly journey. Each and every one of us has a companion devil that is with you in your life until you die. And Allah God Almighty explains to us how does Satan affect us in the Quran in chapter 17 verse 64, which states, "And befool them gradually, whom you can of them with your voice." So Allah God Almighty teaches us that this companion devil, he tricks you, he befools you with his voice, meaning that he engages you in conversations. So this companion devil, he engages you in conversation, he talks to you like a person talking to you, and tries to trick you with the thoughts contained in his voice. So in this regard, somebody might ask, okay, I only hear the voice of myself, so where is this voice of my companion devil? Allah God Almighty teaches the answer for this in the Noble Quran in chapter 114 verse 4, which states, "From the evil of the whisperer who hides." From the evil of the whisperer who hides. So we can learn from this that Satan, he whispers to you, but at the same time he hides from you, meaning that he does not want you to feel his presence. So the only way Satan can accomplish this is if he matches his voice with your own voice. So what Satan does is that he matches his voice with regards to tone, the frequencies, the language you know, to the voice that you hear in your head. So he makes his voice identical to the one you hear in your head with all aspects: frequency, style, speed, languages you know. And you hear ideas in your mind, ideas pop up in your mind containing harm, lust and blasphemy, and you think that yourself is telling you this, while actually companion devil. So we see, brothers and sisters, the superiority of the Noble Quran, how Allah God Almighty teaches us the cause and the mechanism of OCD. Now, also Allah God Almighty teaches us in the Quran the cure for this. Allah God Almighty teaches us the cure for OCD, not only the diagnosis, also the cure, where Allah says in the Noble Quran that if an evil whisper comes to you from Satan, then seek refuge with Allah, meaning that the first thing to do to cure OCD is that when you experience a thought containing harm, lust and blasphemy, you need to seek refuge with Allah, meaning to remember what I'm saying to you, to remember the guidance of Allah God Almighty to you, and to remember that the thought you just experienced is not from yourself, it's from your companion devil. And if Allah, God Almighty, will not judge you for hearing it, He will judge you whether you believe it and carry it out or not. And that this voice or this thought you just experienced from Satan is not true. Now the second step in the cure, Allah states, do not follow the footsteps of Satan, meaning do not carry out what Satan whispered to you in your mind. So the cure, two steps. Firstly, to remember what I'm saying, to remember the guidance of Allah from the Noble Quran, and to know that the whispers of Satan are all lies. And secondly, not to carry it out. So that's the cure. So we see, brothers and sisters, in a few minutes, how we learn from the Noble Quran something that people failed to accomplish for tens and hundreds of years. Because this search for the cure for mental illnesses has been going on for a very long time. So we see the spirit of the Noble Quran. In a few minutes, Allah, God Almighty, teaches us how to diagnose and cure this OCD. Now let me give an example of how to practice this, because the Islam and the Quran is a religion of practice. Now how to practice this knowledge. Now, a case of OCD, that a person, when he, for example, washes himself, a thought pops up in his mind telling him that he's unclean, that he should repeat washing again and again. That's a classic case in OCD, that the feeling of a phobia of being unclean. Now how to practice what I said and put it in effect. Now when a person experiences this thought telling him that he's unclean and he needs to wash himself again and again, he should seek refuge to Allah, meaning he should remember that the thought he just experienced is from his companion devil with a voice matching the one he thinks with, and that this thought is designed to hurt him, to waste his time, to cause him physical and mental damage to his skin and damage to his well-being. And the second step is that he should not carry out what Satan is telling him to wash again and again, and to realize that this is all lies designed to hurt a person. So firstly, to realize the guidance of the Noble Quran. Secondly, not to carry out what Satan is telling him. He should leave the washing place, go on with his life, and do not repeat what Satan is telling you. Do not go into this vicious cycle. So we see how to practice the Noble Quran in our life. So brothers and sisters, we need to show people this, to bring people the path of Allah God Almighty, and to bring them happiness in this life and the hereafter. Because Allah God Almighty wants guidance for people and does not want their torment. And you as a Muslim, you have an obligation to show people this purity and this mercy of Allah God Almighty in the Quran. And to know more details about this topic, please visit my website at www.quran-miracle.com, and you can email me at zaidquran@yahoo.com, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all.